Welcome to An Hour of Power. I am Keith Anthony Blanchard, spiritual teacher, musician, author of the best-selling book Homecoming: Crossing the Bridge to the Soul, and your host of Center of Light. Let's dive in. Welcome to the Center of Light. Are you clear? Have you been working on becoming clear? My friend, my dear, it is required of all of us to become a clear of mind. And there you will find everything you have been looking for when you stop looking, because you are simply clear. What else is there? That's the trick. There is no other trick. There is no other magic. We're going to be speaking about some dark magic, so to speak, to use a play on words to have a little bit of fun. My guest tonight is Nathaniel Gillis, and we're going to be talking about spiritual, my God, warfare. Check this out. I've worked a long time on these banners. They're really fun. They're really cool. Keeps me in my creative flow. Got some it to the bottom right corner. Got the big it to the left corner. My guest tonight. Let's see what's happening. Also, while I'm at it, I'm getting some drop frames. No way. I'm going to post this. There we go. Center of Light is presenting my bestseller. My bestseller, it happened 2 weeks ago in the UK, thanks to Gavin Lee Davies. Homecoming: Crossing the Bridge to the Soul. I'm looking for 3 people. Hello, Heather. I'm looking for 3 people. Send me an inbox. Say, Keith, Keith, I'm in. I'll tell you what that is. You get some benefits, some perks. The first 3 that populate this feed. It's not a favoritism. It's not a special. The first 3 that populate this feed. I'm going to give you some perks. I'm actually taking Homecoming: Crossing the Bridge to the Soul to the audio book level. And so for those who know of my work, you know that it's from the premise that God and I are having a dialogue. Hello, Adana. And I'm looking for the right spirit for God, so to speak. If that makes any ludicrous sense at all. I got a brand new cat, so I'm trying to get her out of the shot. She's wild. So I'm looking to create a character. I don't want it to just to be read. I got voices from "Good morning, Keith" to all these out of this world kind of voices. And I'm going to do all the voices myself, even when I go to India. So I want a couple of 3, 4, maybe 5 at most people to give me their thoughts about what kind of character. I'm going to give them samples. And I would love to see, feel, hear what is most resonant with you. And I will take a consensus and figure out what I'm going to do. Let's see this. You can go to YouTube now if you have not yet already. YouTube.com/Center of Light Radio. And subscribe. Just do that very simply. It helps my work step to the forefront. I'm not trying to be seen. I'm trying to be in this place that brings me joy. I'm already in joy, but I want to enjoy the bigger platform because I know that what I have to offer is something of a powerful nature. I've been doing this 30 plus years. I went to college. The university is called life. I get it. I'm with it. Hello, Karma Deshasha. It's time to get down to some Center of Light Radio beeswax. Let me tell you a little bit about my guest tonight. I'm going through so many dances. I have so many upgrades, so I'm trying to multitask seamlessly as possible. Tonight, my guest is Nathaniel Gillis. Let me tell you about him. We're speaking about spiritual warfare. This is going to get cray. Nathaniel Gillis is a religious demonologist and author. Let me show you, while I'm thinking about it, I told him I would do it. He's got a new book coming out really, really soon. I think this is the one. This is the cover. It's called The Skin That Crawls. And I guess the whole point of it is that thinking about what this book can contain would make your skin crawl. Well, that's kind of the delivery in it. As I'm moving forth with the bio, after living in a haunted house, Nathaniel spent 20 years researching what it was he encountered. Nathaniel is a founder of the
Preternatural.
Thank you, sir. I was going to say prenatal, and I knew that wasn't right. Preternatural. Help me again. Epiphenomenal philosophy. Nathan has sought to redefine the nature of haunting the haunting phenomena. You left out the word the, bro. I'm just jacking. Ghost in high strangeness. He's often quoted for his concept of the demonic. The reason they are playing by different rules is because they are playing a different game. Let me grab his link. Everyone, if you would please. I'm now inserting a link to his website. Go walk all over his page and make a big stink. Let him know you exist. My bro, welcome to Center of Light.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Just remember to project if you can. I know you have a very soft-spoken voice, so yeah, get in there and be yourself. So I have actually, before we get to some of your bullet points, what I did not want to talk about in the radio green room was too much. Were you raised Catholic? That comes back home to me. So what denomination were you raised in?
I was raised in the Pentecostal denomination. So Pentecostalism is basically strict holiness. So when I grew up, I wasn't allowed to wear shorts. I wasn't allowed to go to see movies. None of that. So it's a very strict organization. But, you know, I didn't grow up Catholic, and so that's a good question because I'm a demonologist, and most people do ask that.
Again, I want to say it's really hard to hear you. I don't know. Something has shifted. Something has shifted. I don't know if you can pull the mic closer.
How about that? Is that better?
That's much better. But I just want to make sure you heard. Otherwise, the interview doesn't really serve you, or the we that you're trying to empower. So I ask my guests usually 3 questions. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes I ask 1 or 2. But the most important question I could ask is, what in the hell got you on this path? Though in your bio, we talked about the 20-year experience. What happened to you in that moment, sir? What made you want to pursue this, to quench your soul of everything why this took place in the first place?
I moved into a haunted house, and that's what really set me onto this discipline. I encountered in that home entities, different manifestations that influenced me in such a way that I had to figure out what it was that I experienced. So that's what led me into this discipline, and it really, the manifestations at least, it really pushed me into dimensions of demonology that I think many, at least the field, is lacking, because what I experienced in that home transcended the microcosm of what I was taught in Sunday school.
What were you taught in Sunday school?
Right. Well, that the demons were fallen angels, that there was an hierarchy present, that number one, that they're masters of Torah, specifically, that that they are the ones that cause havoc, destructions, famine, all this. And yet what I was encountering at home was different in the sense that I would see shadow figures. I didn't know those existed. I would see smoky apparitions that would float into my room at nighttime. I didn't know, where does that begin? What is that? So the full-bodied apparition that I saw at the very first open house, that's where it all started. I mean, none of that fit the theology, at least, of demonology that I grew up in. And so I knew there was one or two possibilities. Either they were wrong, or I was wrong, or I guess one of 3. The third one being maybe we're both interpreting this phenomenon the wrong way. So that's why I'm here today. And, it drove me headfirst into trying to understand the worldview of the Eastern Mediterranean writer, not just from the ideology of the Western theologian, but trying to understand what it is that these authors were experiencing that would even cause them to believe in demonology.
I had a friend, only because he passed, many years ago. He passed about, 6-7 years ago. Phenomenal psychic. Phenomenal. This supports your point. He was phenomenal psychic. He wasn't psychic because I'm going to read you. He wasn't that. He was just this guy who had this true, serious ability. Mm-hmm. And he and I were knuckleheads together, and I told him of an experience that was happening in a house. And as you said, there's an experience that happened in the house. And I don't want to give him too much information because the woman who owned the house gave me the information. And I wasn't trying to test Richard Black to see how good he was. I just wanted this to be organic and raw to see what naturally can come from it that can heal everyone, myself as the student of Richard, Richard as the teacher who needs validation, and for those people who are looking for healing. And so as we were moving in, he says, Keith, come sit on the couch with me. I said, sure. What's up? He goes, I'm going to invite this energy in here and ask it what it wants. What is its purpose? Supporting your point. And Richard being the interpreter in between the entity or the energy and or the lack of energy and he says, what is it you do here on the plane of Earth? And it said, most people get us wrong. We are here to scare you back to the light if your will is not to move towards the light on your own accord. Is this sort of what you're saying? Kind of like, we're, right?
Yeah, so you have two hands of God, the right hand of his will, and then he has the left hand, which is where he operates with fallen angels. Now, and they do just that. They'll push you back into the light and make you afraid of the darkness. So I have found that to be true in both research and in experience. However, the possessing entities that are transient, in and out, and commandeering the consciousness of mortals, these entities are written about prolifically in the Holy Writ, in the Bible, and they're different than, I'm sorry? Oh, okay. I thought I was cutting out. But these particular entities are different than that of a fallen angel in the sense that they're not just here to push us back into repentance. They have a belief system that is limited to the microcosm of time they existed in. And so while that is true, and it's a fascinating phenomenon in itself, there remains to be explored another dimension to this that is perhaps more troubling and complicated.
There are so many ways I can just lean into. I know we have bullet points, but I like keeping it organic, and I will get to some of those. Being raised Catholic as to why I posed that question.
Right.
I would wake up many years ago, Nathaniel. Seriously, bro. And when I was Catholic or coming out of it or recovering, if you will.
Recovering, there we go.
Coming out of a night's sleep, finding a way to make myself wake up into the room. Because a demon or a devil or the old hag or whatever it is that got you by your bag.
Right.
Sweating buckshot. Now I've shifted from that to my first knee-jerk reaction may be, what is this? And then I've learned to come back to myself, my center, and go, you messed with the wrong dude. And I understand because of my background how this is somewhat still a part of my foreground, but I'm getting better at it. When you say that, because you are a demonologist, here's a good question for you. To what level are you, I'm going to get raw with you, bro. To what level are you willing to submerge yourself and an experience to try to bring light to the situation? I don't mean that to be personal. I'm asking you because it's a beautiful, delicious question.
In what context? In what level? I mean, is it research?
Well, I guess maybe I'm not clear exactly what demonology is, other than just the study of the demonic forces. Do you dabble, go into people's experience to say, I'm here to use this knowledge that I've gleaned to bring it forth in this situation to make things better?
Yes, and I guess I should say yes. I'm going to say that and go with it. Because a demonologist, in terms of an observer, is someone who records the phenomenon and tries to understand its belief system, its motivations, not just what it has faith in, but what it has fear of. In addition to that, there are cases where I have went in and done cleansings of homes, specifically a big murder case that we had here in Ohio. But primarily a demonologist by tradition is someone who studies the phenomenon in the data sample and interprets it. Now, that data sample can come from antiquity, like much of what I do, but the main point of being a demonologist is not to just go out there and throw holy water at apparitions, not to discredit that, but it's to take ancient writings, interpret them, dust the transcripts off, the papyrus off, and take it to modernity and say, okay, this is what they believed then, and this is how we can apply it today. And that's where I am in terms of my research. The research is not as simple as a lot of the religious dogmatism would like us to think it is. It is somewhat complicated, which we'll get into that later tonight. But to answer your question, I want to think like them. I want to understand their worldview, because it's not just that they possess in transient cases. That's the elementary entity. There is a PhD out there that we've been calling. Makes sense?
Right.
And
These
these entities are apocalyptic. They're basically serial killers. In Ezekiel 13, Yahweh called them soul hunters. They're different. And so my discipline, the discipline of demonology, has been riddled with mis and disinformation, because possession is how they're educating their young, and we're being used to propagate a new species of the afterlife. How about that for an answer?
That's delicious. My bro, I don't want to announce this publicly, but I have to. If you would, go to your Skype settings and look under audio. I know what's happening. You hit your desk a couple times and your volume went amazing. Go to your settings and choose audio and choose not let auto set mic kind of thing. Please do that, because I really want to hear, because when you hit your desk, your voice just disappeared.
Okay, so microphone. Oh, automatically adjusts
Yes,
everything?
unbullet point that.
Is that good?
So it's unchecked.
Yeah, it's unchecked.
Fantastic. That way you won't disappear on me. Bro, that's a fantastic answer. Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, I'm fascinated with this realm. Well, one, because when it does happen, it happened the other night. Bro, I was in an experience. I'm hanging out in South Louisiana, where I'm from. I go next door because I heard there was a party. They welcomed me in, and it turned out to be what we recently come to know as a spirit party. Not such a good party, but a spirit party. And they were freaking eating people. And look, in these realms, I'm like, you don't want to jack with me. I'll just blast you with light, a kiss you in your mouth, and you'll just disappear into forever. And you don't want to do that because you don't want to die. You don't want to transcend your ego as to why you're dark. And so I decided I'm going to leave this part. And they say, where are you going? And so because they knew I was onto them. And when I left the experience, I sent it to a completely opposite experience. So I know the reality, and it's very intriguing. Let me look at this bullet point, because there are a couple on here, many of them on here, that I've seen. I asked you if you're Catholic. What is a Dybbuk?
A Dybbuk is a disincarnate human being who possesses people. The term is a Hebrew word that means to cling to and to possess. The term first originated in the 16th century, the age of the demoniac is what it's called. And it's a Kabbalistic term. So it's basically Jewish mysticism in the 16th century. That's where it originated. But it's a possessing entity. It possesses people. And that's was one of the first nuances of my work that pointed me in the direction of this being afterlife phenomenon. And not just the, oh my God, it's a demon, horns and hooves. We're actually experiencing entities who would possess people and say, hey, listen, can I get a proper burial? And then I'll leave. And so that's what a Dybbuk is, or a Dybbuk.
I know you have, because of your bio, talked about and experienced this period in your life where you had this haunting. Have you personally, if you wish to share, an experience, something that is just beyond just a haunting in a house, that is just truly just like, I want to just do whatever you don't want me to do to you. That's exactly what I want to do to you, to scare you from your bones to your soul.
I did, and the most intimidating, I should say, case that I had, and I always talk about it because it's left such an imprint on me. It was a murder case that I had. I was called into a home where a murder had taken place, and a 13-year-old girl, the daughter, had actually opened the door for the murderer. She had been working with another young woman, and the other young woman came in and did most of the killing, or did all the killing, actually. But when I got there, one of the victims that actually survived the attack told me, he said that when this individual had walked into the house, there was a male guttural voice coming out of her as she was, just doing the act. So when I got there, I could feel that entity in the home. It hated me. If it could, it would have got a hold of me and killed me. And so that was the most problematic and troubling, even to this day, case that I've had, because it wasn't just the act of murder, but it was the stain of consciousness that had just drenched that entire home. And at the end of the night, when I had worked with my angel and prayed that God would send an angel, my angel that usually comes to my right, into the home, you could see that entity came into the living room, and it just got real hot. It got real hot. And you could feel all of his emotions. It just came to a climax. And when it did, it just exploded or imploded. You could actually see, it was like the lights were off. And then when that entity left, all of the darkness left. You could see, we watched as the darkness left the walls, just like that.
Would this be a demon or a shadow person, or is there a difference? One is just a little deeper and darker, meaning a demon, and a shadow person is someone who's just kind of walking around and has no light in them because they're depressed, angry, hopeless, and all that stuff?
Yes. So this goes in another direction. Shade, shadow, that term is in the Bible. They were called shades. They were called redefine. Those are the disembodied spirits. So yes, 100%. But yeah, that darkness fled, and to this day, it really, it sunk deeply into my heart, because I had actually ran into a social worker that had been working with one of the girls, and she told me, she said, after you left that house, I didn't even know I was talking to her. I had no idea she was the social worker. I'm telling her about this case because I've heard about you. I'm like, yeah, right. You know what I mean? She's like, yeah, but anyways, after we cleansed the house, that possessing entity left both girls, and the girl that opened the door said, I didn't even remember doing it. It was just so more so than anything, that case, it shed light into this field in a way that I don't think I've ever understood before, because it could not open its own doors. Now, we can go into homes and we see them doing it, right? But this entity wanted to be inside the house. It turned out to be the father-in-law of the victim. He could not open his own doors. He had to have a human do it. Why? You know what I mean? So that's what really led me into this, thinking, okay, it's not just the scary stuff. The scary stuff it's profound and meaningful, but it's like my friend of mine and one of my great heroes in this field, Paulino, he says it's not just the scary stuff. It's more so the things that happen that really messes with your understanding of reality. And so that is what kind of allowed me to grow out of some of the dogmas and demonology that I grew up in.
When you said a moment ago that they can't just enter, what comes to me is this movie Fright Night years ago. Whether it's true or not, it's sort of, at least what I think makes your point is, they can't just enter. They have to be invited in. Basically, if a demon, devil, whatever bad thing comes to your door and knocks, and you open the door, if you say come in, or if you answer the phone and say hello kind of thing, it's an invitation. I did an interview, Nathaniel, 2.5 months ago, in support of Homecoming, Crossing the Bridge to the Soul. And I was on this radio show that was about extraterrestrials. I love extraterrestrials. They're some sexy celestial beings. I love it. But this radio platform wanted the dark stuff. They wanted to be They wanted to talk about the laying on the table and getting something probed up your backside. They wanted to be about you and fear and all this. That's just not me. So anyway, it's a very popular radio show. You and I we both know it. And it went soft very quick. I was psychically attacked. I'm not playing victim here, but I was psychically attacked. And so as I'm doing this interview, talking about amalgamating with energies, extraterrestrial, celestial, ultra-terrestrial, whatever word we choose, that it's beyond the body. Once I'm in this gig, I see you for a second, then we go to this level or this plateau, which is beyond the seeing capacity, because I don't care what you look like. We're having a dialogue on another level, absolutely, completely. And they wanted hardware, and they wanted abduction, and so anyway, as this thing started to go down, I never noticed. Nathaniel, I never noticed. It was just going in this swirling pool. Remember when you were a kid and you were in a swimming pool and everybody wants to make a whirlpool and you're in the middle, you're cool. Once you get into the outer ring to the event horizon, you're sucked in. I was sucked in and I didn't even know. In fact, I felt drunk. I felt drunk as if it was like, I just don't want to leave this place. And then as this thing started to unfold, someone called in because it was taking calls hour or whatever it was. He just started laying into me. And I was like, I have enough composure that I'm not going to buy into this particular drama. So they disconnected the interview and started talking about. So my point is, I did not realize in that moment I was pulled into a demonic experience. I don't know if it would be demonic, but at least to the level of a psychic attack. Are you familiar with psychic attacks and how they affect people, those people who don't even know that they're being attacked?
Yeah, psychic attack usually, and there's different terms for it, obviously, but the phenomenon and the manifestation is the same, and that's why the term the debuk or dybbuk is so important. The historical tradition of a debuk is that it's a spirit that's disincarnate and it lays on you. It lays on you. And so it conforms to you before you conform to it. And it's that stage, that attack, that projection of alien, no pun intended, alien consciousness, that it's the grooming mechanism for these entities. So before you conform to it, it will conform to you. And the goal of this entire narrative is that when it wants to gather its consciousness and memory in one place and in one time, it's going to send a thought to them or to you or to anybody, and you will not know the difference between your thought and its intention and thought. And
so
at that point,
I literally mean to interrupt. Are you saying that it is so intelligent, so instead of trying to get you to conform to it, it will conform to you to make you feel like this is a natural part of yourself, so then it can begin its manipulation process?
exactly.
That is truly intelligent. For whatever reason, that's intelligence.
Yeah. They're very intelligent. You're right. So that's that grooming mechanism, that priming for possession. That attachment is its way of molding and it's actually manufacturing consent within the victim. And so that's why when I deal with attachments, that's easiest to deal with because it's prevention. It's the intervention that's the hardest because now it feels like it belongs there. And one of the great anthropologists, Fritz Kramer, called that possession the actual social skin of that possessing entity. And so it's disembodied, and it wants a body, and now it's here. It has flesh, and it has pressed pause on the will and memory of the victim. But that's, as far as I could tell with the pathology and victimology of possession and attachment, that's how it starts.
Are you open to take an idea to counter with a friend of mine in the chat room, Rajesh? Is that Rajesh? Let me check to see if that's Rajesh. Love me some Rajesh. I think so. And if it's not, forgive me. Let me read something to you, sir, and get your thoughts about it. He says, all mess of haunting is due to mixing of incarnations from different religions of progenies. That That brings curses of ancestors. It lowers power of religion. All religions are here on the planet or for some reason or purpose and kept unmixed, as well as live in harmony with each other, respecting. I think what he's saying is that, which really is not a part of the theme of the show, but I want to honor him,
Yeah.
is that the reason these things are happening, I'm assuming, is because things from a previous time are so left undone. I don't know if you know this, but or would you agree with this, that a poltergeist is not this ghost. A poltergeist is not this ghost in your house, to my understanding. Please correct me if I'm wrong. A poltergeist, metaphorically, hypothetically, is this energy that lives in this house, a household. People having discord, trouble. One's an alcoholic, one's a drug addict, one's an abuser. And there's all this negative stuff in the house. And this energy begins to collect wherever in the house that it feels like it needs to sit. And it becomes intelligent. And in this intelligence, it begins to do things. I think this is sort of what he is offering. So what would be your thoughts about things that are unresolved that would cause such things?
Well, to my knowledge, that would be an attachment. These entities are not superfluous. They waste no time. And so, in terms of religion, I'm more of a secular demonologist than I am a religious demonologist. Because when you read the Bible, you're reading the Levant, you're reading Mesopotamian motifs. So all of this makes sense, but I do identify with his understanding of ancestors, because I think it plays back into the understanding that when you die, if you die a good death, you're an ancestor. But other than that, the poltergeist idea, the data sample says this. If you notice it, let's look at what they're being drawn to. Negative energy. That's an attachment. When they give you they give you that kind of attention. They're opening doors, throwing stuff. I've found more often than not that it's easier to blame the victim than it is to understand what's happening. Many cases, and especially with a friend of mine, Shane Searway, he's a progenitor of this theory too, that yeah, it's a poltergeist now, but what will it be when it wants to really manifest? I don't think that these entities will go in and open doors just to open doors, or even throw pots and pans just to throw pots and pans. They're there for a reason, and they're predatory in nature. It's like me getting your attention. Until I get your attention, I'm a poltergeist. Until I get what I want, I'm a poltergeist. It's until they're present in one place at one time, they've gathered memory, gathered consciousness, then they act. Does it make sense? Because poltergeist activity is not just, okay, I'm present and I don't know why I am. It's I'm present and I'm here for a reason. I'm not wasting time. I have a victim. Usually it's 12 years old. Usually she's a female. That's classic demonology. That's classic an incubus entity. So, Dan, I'm not going to ramble, but that's my answer to that question.
Rod just corrected me. He said, bro, I meant all these haunted souls are your ancestors, no one else. I can totally see that. And not only are there ancestors who back when we were more unconscious than we are more conscious now, as to why they'd be our ancestors visiting us, but our ancestors in the form that they are our teachers, they are our parents, they are, believe it or not, strangely, even in all this dark stuff, they're still our guardians, because everything truly is of the light. People have asked me, Keith, how can you possibly say that God is behind the darkness? Well, my thought is, if everything exists because of the generator, you remove the generator, you unplug the plug from the wall, the light goes out. Well, of course, Keith, that furthers my point. There is no light, there is dark. Well, no, if God leaves the entire situation, there's nothing. So that goes back to our early discussion, which is that they're here to scare us back to the light. Actually, they are agents of the light. They're just simply doing their job. Like Roger said, those ancestors revisiting us when we were so unconscious. How does the incubus and the succubus come into play at all. All this crazy deliciousness.
Okay, so your ancestral worship and the idea of what's called divinized ancestors, where they die, they become ancestors and guardians. That does play into the role. They're not just guardians, but they're the gatherers. So one of my favorite theologians, he's a commentarian of Genesis. His name is Nahum Sarna. And Nahum Sarna mentions, it's fascinating, about how that your Hebrew patriarchs, it was said that when they died, they were gathered unto their ancestors or buried with their fathers. And yet at the same time, you have Moses, who that was said about, and he was buried by God in an unmarked grave. And so Nahum Sarna came to the conclusion that when the Bible refers to being gathered by and gathered unto your ancestors, that that doesn't just happen here in this earthly dimension, that it happens in the netherworld, I guess, or the other afterlife phenomenon. Anyways, but you're gathered by and gathered unto them. So I understand that. And God will keep Satan on a leash, right? He does. Satan is it's a migratory loan word for adversary. It's the guy that accuses you. You know what I mean? However, there is an entity out there that Yahweh is at war with. And it manifested at first in the book of Genesis chapter 6 as quote unquote the Watchers. Is this okay to go into?
No, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. So this is where, to answer your question, this is where the incubus phenomenon comes into play. So in the biblical narrative of Genesis 6, it says that the sons of God saw the daughters of men and went in unto them and made unto them wives. Well, you know, it's fine if we don't want to ask good questions. The good question I would ask is, okay, how did they get seed to create offspring with these mortal women? Theologians and scholars have argued this point for millennia because it never made any sense. The word watcher means the wakeful ones. Now, I don't know that an angel can sleep or be awake. It just exists. So what I had to do as a researcher is I had to go into that narrative and figure out, okay, what is really going on here? And one of the major tools that I used in interpreting this passage is called comparative etymology. In other words, I had to go to different religions around that text at the same time that the Genesis 6 was written. What were they writing about? Does that make sense? Okay, so what were they writing about concerning this narrative? And what I found was that the words watcher, the words Nephilim, the word Rephaim, all of these terms were actually borrowed from these neighboring religions and then placed into the Genesis 6 text. So in other words, like let's use the word Rephaim. The word Rephaimai, from where Rephaim comes from, was first discovered, was first written rather, in the late Iron Age. And so one of the things that I had to understand was, what did it mean to them? Who were these watchers? Where did they get their seed from? Angels cannot procreate. Where did they get their seed from? So in doing so, this is going to get very interesting. In doing so, I came across what's called the Apocryphon of John. And it was a Coptic manuscript written and preserved by Egyptian monks between the 2nd and 4th centuries. This is what they had to say. They were Christian monks, by the way. But this is what they had to say about Genesis 6. Now let's take what I'm about to tell everybody and let's compare it to what an incubus is. This gets fascinating. It says that these entities were shadow figures. In addition to that, it says that when they took wives unto themselves, that these women were not their own wives. It says that they manifested to these women as though they were their husbands. So these women thought that they were speaking, talking, and having a relationship, quote unquote relationship, with their husbands. They weren't. And then at the moment of conception, this is an incubus, right? It's fascinating. At the moment of conception, they stared into the eyes of these wives, these women, and then changed their selves into their original appearance. Why? Well, in order to understand what they were doing, we have to understand what that meant to them. That was a tradition, what's called an obstetric, a gynecological birthing ritual in Mesopotamia. And it was a belief that whatever the woman is focused upon at the time of conception, she will birth in her womb the material image of. It's an incubus. So, here's something that's very interesting as well. That passage, that text goes on further in a very chilling way. It says, and from the darkness, that's the afterlife. That's beyond the grave. They merged, they mixed a disincarnate spirit with a soulless body, and then placed that soul, that disincarnate spirit in the body. And we called them Nephilim. That word Nephilim in the text, it means literally someone who's died. Fallen ones, not in the sense of angels without wings, but people who lived and died. And there's specific characteristics to those who are wakeful, like the watchers, who have no rest. So everything in this biblical narrative and everything that we're experiencing in modernity, it's about the afterlife. And yes, we do have, fallen angels. We do have Satan operating. We do have angels operating. But there's a secondary dimension that these entities exist in, and Yahweh called them soul hunters.
Everyone, Keith Anthony Blanchard here, having a wonderful time with my brand new friend, Nathaniel Gillis, and we're speaking about spiritual warfare. When we come back, I want to ask him this question, a delicious question. I love it because it reflects to me an experience I had some years ago. Why are they, the dark stuff, why are they sensual if they are disincarnate? I'm sure you can come up with your own conclusions. It's not that hard. They're trying to get your attention. And they use whatever tricks, bag of tricks, whatever cookies, candies, Reese's Pieces they throw on the ground, cookies. They can do that. I'm going to be right back. Keith Anthony Blanchard, Center of Light Radio. I'll see you shortly. Let's see what we're going to play tonight. How about Perfect? Angel of Love. In a dark situation, we need Angel of Love. Why not?
She turned to me and told me life was not too easy unless you can let go. I lay surprised at the simpleness of her soul. Wasting away in a sea of uncertainty. She had stayed with me for days. I needed love in so many different ways. And as I watched, she floated through the room. And as I cried, she was there to dry them too. Hold me and don't let go. Hold me reveal to me the beauty of your soul. I turned away, her light was so blinding, the energy of her love. She said goodbye and turned into a dove. As I watched, she floated through the room. And as I cried, she was there to dry them too. Hold me and don't let go. Hold me, never leave. Hold me and don't let go. Hold me, never leave. Never leave. She turned to me, told me life was not too easy unless you can let go. Reveal to me the beauty of your soul.
Welcome back to Center of Light. Let's get right back down to Center of Light Radio. Beeswax. Bro, let me ask you. One of your questions resonates with me. I got multiple screens. Forgive me, everyone. Everyone, welcome. Hanging out with Nathaniel Gillis, and we're speaking about spiritual warfare. Oh, my God. We're going to be here for a bit. I got a lot of questions. Not to buck anyone's current, but just to poke a little bit. We got to poke a little bit. You know, we live in sameness and nothing else special can happen. So one of the questions I have for you, sir, is why are they, if disincarnate in their sensuality? I know this to be true. Years ago, oh my God, back when I was living a lifestyle of whatever, coming out of a relationship of whatever, with extracurricular ideas of being sensual,
Right.
and not getting what I was promised and wanted. I understand the mindset. All that being said, I came into a lucid experience in the dream realm. It's not dream. It was real. It's not a movie I watched and woke up in the morning and tell you what I watched on the movie. I was present and it wasn't fun. So I'm in this large castle, Game of Thrones kind of place. And I'm walking down the courtship, the aisle, whatever, and all the stained glass windows as it should be. And as I'm doing so, I come upon two buxom blondes ready to get down to some beeswax. And I'm like, yeah, let's do it. And so as I approach these two, I look at their feet. I have a foot fetish, probably from an Oriental past life experience. And as I begin my gaze or my scan upward from their feet, and they looked exactly like I wanted them to until I got to their face. And they had these cat-like demonic qualities. And they were inviting me for a ride. And I said, something said it's not right. As much as my desire, that fire that lives in all of us to have such whatever that may be for a person. And I said, I'm going outside. and say, you don't want to do that. The sunlight's going to burn you. And I said, exactly. I want to be purified. And I went outside and I was scorched, kind of like I felt the energy like in the movie The Contact, when Jodie Foster was touching the energy and it was very liquidy and watery. And I was shifted to another level of consciousness entirely. So I want to validate that to you. Why are they so seductive? Why?
They want to harvest our biological substance. It's
Even though they're disincarnate, they want to harvest our biological substance?
Here's why. See, the greatest demonologist regarding the incubus phenomenon, we'll get to the succubus in a second, but I'm going to build a narrative here, if I can, was Father Sinistrari of Amino. He was a Franciscan priest, and he would actually have cases where he was in the bed, in the home of the victim within an hour of the incubus attack, and he would discover, can I say the word semen? Okay. He would collect semen samples from virgins who had never had intercourse. She thought it was a dream, and he's collecting. Montague Summers did the same thing. He's collecting semen samples. Now, anybody with half a brain would ask the question, what in the heck is going on here? Here's what Sinistrari and Montague Summers understood, that these entities, a great deal of them, are harvesting other substances from the recently deceased. They've known this for millennia. That's why in biblical antiquity in the Levant, they would try to bury their people as fast as possible. That's why your vampirology, they would feast on mostly on people who've recently died. And so when you get into the funerary rites of ancient Mesopotamia, Sumer, you get into the Akkadian and biblical languages, you see this narrative emerging from the darkness. So what we do not know is if the incubus and the succubus are the same spirits. And what they're doing is they'll arrive to the male, right? Take it from the male and appear as a female to get the arousal, and then take the semen and then go to a female and act like a male.
And you know what? That you say that, that's amazing that you say that, because as I shared with you a minute ago, in this experience, it felt like not only female, but double female. Oh my God, let's make a sandwich. Now that you say that, I feel, intuit that it was so masculine, because if it was truly feminine, it wouldn't have this a want from me. It was always about the selfishness of the masculine. Truly, it was.
Yep. And yeah, so we don't know if they're the one and the same or if they're separate entities that are working with each other. What we do know is that we have been so focused in the Western world on demonic possession, we've not yet understood the phenomenon of demonic impregnation. That's what they're after. It's impregnation. See, we have in the Kabbalistic tradition in the 16th century, Isaac Lurie and Jaime Battau are the two great exorcists of that period. But they would have different cases. Matter of fact, one of them sticks out to me mostly, where the woman said to have been possessed by her husband. When she came to the exorcist saw that entity in her womb laying in a fetal position, which led them to ask the question, and this is a very grievous question, but it's worth asking, is possession pregnancy? And we're misinterpreting the phenomenon. I would say it's both. That's why in Genesis 6, it was the act of trying to recreate a body that looks like them. And then once the body's created, then the possession takes place. Malachi Martin would consider that certain possession perfect possession, where it can look like us, walk like us, act like it's like us, but it is not like us. And to finish this point and solidify it further, we're used to men looking like monsters. We've not yet understood that monsters can look like men, and that is where the Bible is in its entire demonology. It's the afterlife.
Welcome to 2020.
Yeah, that's
Right?
exactly, or 2012 or 2021. Yeah, it's
Beautifully
here.
said, bro. That's so beautifully said. It's so powerful because when we get caught up in the nonsense and or the illusion, though no matter how much we choose to believe that our intentions are pure,
Yeah,
you will know them by their fruit. Whatever happens in the reflection becomes an affection or an infection. And so we're always being monitored, loved upon, graced upon the blessedness of God, like we talked about earlier. That demon sitting on the chair with my friend Richard was like, we're agents of God. We're here to help you to go back to the light. So, in all of this for you, do you see this happening not only in the form of Nathaniel doing his work for many years that he's been doing this, but truly moving about the world? Truly, in my opinion, is actually beautiful if you're on this side of the fence, understanding what that thing in the world is moving is
yeah,
about, because you go, oh my God, if for everything that is so horrible, evil, and bad, then because of this duality, everything is so beautiful, gorgeous, and glad.
right.
So, do you see this moving about in the world that people are being succubused and
Yeah,
incubus upon as if
yes.
the old hag, even in what they would consider their waking states of consciousness, they are still in hypnagogic, that there's
Yep.
this old bitch sitting on their chest, shaking them, saying, I'm going to get your attention, and they're being pulled into this erroneous reality.
Yes, 100%. And it's happening all over the world. But I want to say this. This is interesting as well. Getting back to the hypnagogic understanding of this, in Ezekiel 13, Yahweh labels these entities necromancers. That's what they are. They're soul hunters. He says that those should die live, and those who live should die. Or let me back up and say this to quote it accurately. He says, "Those who should die live. Those who should live die." Now, at first, that sounds like, okay, it's a very troubling statement. But when you get into the narrative deeper than that, it's literally the reason those who should die are living is because those who should live are dying. He called them soul hunters. He said that they would enter into the homes at nighttime, and that you're going to see a serial killer pathology here, guys. These are not just the minuscule, immature entities who possess strangers in a transient way. These are predatory in nature. They're incredibly intelligent, and they are living in an ancient belief system. Yahweh said that they're dream diviners, not in the sense of Joseph in the Bible, but in the sense that they will put you in a dream state. And then when it says, especially in Ezekiel 13, it says that those who hunt the souls of men to make them fly, it's a reference to the Egyptian Ba'a soul. We would call them orbs. That when the person dies, their soul leaves. Well, what these creatures do, and they are a species of necromancers, they will put up their victims in a sleep state, give them a dream, separate that soul from the body, capture the soul, cut a piece of flesh off their body, the skin, and sew it onto themselves. Soul hunters are necromancers. That's why they're the same creatures that we experienced in Genesis 6. Matter of fact, can I go further with this? This is fascinating. I hope I can. Okay. I want to make sure I answer the question, but I want to get deep in this very quickly.
I love deep.
Okay. In Canaan, in the land of Canaan, the spies went in there to spy out the land. When they came back, they made a very peculiar reference, actually two of them. They said, number one, the land devours its inhabitants. I thought it should be the other way around, right? No. They said the land devours its inhabitants. That's one thing. Also, their names of these creatures, according to the Amorites, were Zamzumim. Im in Hebrew is plural. So the singular would be Zimzum or Zemzum. Now, that's not a concrete title for these creatures. The Amorites called them Zamzum because the word Zamzum was the closest phonetic rendering to what the language they spoke to each other sounded like. This is incredible. We are so used to possessing entities fooling us into believing that they have all of these languages and that it should matter to us. What is their language? There's a second language that they use to communicate with each other that we are not privy to. They are called Zamzumim. So it's a chirping sound, it's a muttering sound, and it's almost a babble. Now, to understand that
Babble?
reference, right, confusion,
Right.
us, right? In order to understand that reference and to solidify the fact that they're necromancers, that redacts back to Isaiah 8 and 19, when Yahweh prohibits necromancy and says that you seek those who, watch this, guys, chirp and mutter. Why? You chirp like a bird. Why? Because you're possessed by them. The bird soul. You chirp, you mutter. They're speaking the language of necromancers. And I'm going to say this, when we go into homes and we smell decomposition, you're dealing with a necromancer. He's not just spiritual. He is a physical entity who was going to deceased carcasses, and he's sowing even people that are alive and taking from them flesh. We would call them extraterrestrial.
Yeah, because, the Bible talks about lizards, extraterrestrials. It doesn't say extraterrestrials, reptilians, or any form of a demon that takes this, reptilian sort of form. And so anything, and you said this earlier, and I'm glad you mentioned that because it reminded me of bringing this forth, which is anything that is not pro-human is not of this earth. Anything that is not pro-human is not of this earth. So therefore, it makes them extraterrestrial. It doesn't mean that extraterrestrials are not ultra-terrestrials or celestials, those who have our interest in heart, not mind, but heart. But they have an agenda, and they are very freaking intelligent. They are so intelligent. So there was a question I want to bring forth. I saw in your bullet points of something that might be really important is, what religion would you say, and I'm going to assume just because I like playing in dangerous ground, is that it's not the one we think. What religion has the best handle on what demons are?
None of them and all of them.
That's a safe cushion place to sit.
Right? That's not like a politician. I'm gonna just go. Yeah, if you dip, yeah. So
Right.
if you go left, I'll go right. Well, here's the issue with this. All the Abrahamic religions are trying to understand the same phenomenon. And so if you put the rabbi, the imam, and the priest, even a pastor, all of them in one room and say, what's a demon? They're going to come out in 3 hours and say, listen, we have religious supremacy. Our demons are the real demons. Now, if that's the case, then we have different heavens that they fell from. We have different gods that they rebelled against. And we have different exorcistic rites. Because the data sample, at least historically, the material culture says that not every demon is afraid of Yahweh. This is fascinating. And I'm going to say this. When I say that those demons, I'm talking about the base nature immature ones. I'm not talking about the PhD serial killers. Does that make sense? I hope maybe I can get into that in another show or something. But so they're not afraid of the same God. They don't have the faith or fear of the same gods. And so even in Baghdad in 1999, we had a case where a Jewish man was possessed, and he was possessed by a Muslim. And so the Jewish exorcistic rites didn't work. They were quoting Psalms 91 forward and backward in the ear like Isaac Luria. He didn't budge. So they had to actually go to the neighboring city and get an imam. And next thing you know, he's gone. Now, those are your base nature entities. Now, your serial killer entities are afraid of one particular individual. Can I say his name? Yeshua.
Absolutely.
They're terrified of Yeshua.
You know what? I want to invite support and encourage. They are afraid of anything that represents that, whatever that may be. That could be a this, which could be Buddhism. Your great grandmother, who represents everything that is beautiful because she fed her beautiful children, and anything that represents that which is of goodness. Would that be an honest analogy
yes.
of seeing the Yeshua component or principle?
Well, you're exactly right. Yeshua embraced a transcendent presence that they could, like, he didn't even perform exorcists. He just looked at them and said, go. It wasn't, what's your name? It was, but it wasn't, okay, I'm gonna throw holy water and all this stuff. It was basically a dialogue. So they got tired of him. Just, all right, I'm done, bye. And it was like, okay, snap, who's that guy? We're out of here, But to move on further than that, what we're experiencing with these Abrahamic religions are different traditions that all stem from the same cradle of civilization. Now, where religious dogma comes in is what really limits us, because you have one religion that says, okay, they're all fallen angels, and then it's like, okay, they're all fallen angels, and all demons are Catholic, or all demons are Pentecostal, like I grew up with. They're all afraid of Pentecostalism, and it's like, wait a minute, what are we dealing with here? Because we do have entities that will tell us basically that I am afraid of this, and I don't have faith in this. And what the data sample speaks of is that there are at least two kinds of species here. There's the entity that possesses because it wants something. It might want prayer. It might want proper burial. It might want something, an offering made. The second entity is not transient.
So let me interrupt you here. When you said there are two types, one is, we're talking about, of course, tonight's show presentation interview has been about the demons in the dark, but you said there are two types. One type would mean I want a specific type of burial. That's not such a bad thing. This is some energy that's saying I deserve this particular rite of passage. And if I don't get this rite of passage that I told my brother and my sister, hey, look, if I pass, I want this kind of thing to happen to me. I'm going to, quote, haunt you to say, this has to happen because this is once I've declared that's going to help me alleviate this thing, this woe that's aching me. So I can.
Exactly right.
So, yes?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Absolutely. And so in many cases, especially, and I'm not going to, in terms of religious dogma, we have created repeat offenders because we think, okay, I'll just throw holy water at it. Just because you partially cleansed it doesn't mean you've banished it. You might have kicked it out into Rebecca down the street, who's some little girl playing a video game, don't know what the heck's going on. This entity needs assistance. So that's one entity. That's one species that possesses people. There's a fine line between that and an incubus case, where it's literally taking semen and trying to place it in the womb. And so what I try to do in my interreligious studies is say, okay, even though religion has different dogmas and motifs, and they're limiting and binding, I want to know what they have in common in terms of manifestation. What I found is very chilling to me, at least, because just like in the Kabbalistic rites, it wasn't just, okay, I'm possessed, but people were actually pregnant with what they were possessed by. And that's in Judaism. It's in Kabbalism, or Kabbalah rather. But in Islamia, it's the same phenomenon. The very first question they ask in our exorcistic rite is, have you had a dream? Hello, Ezekiel 13. Have you had a dream where you had intercourse with somebody who wasn't your husband? Okay, yes, I have. Second question.
That doesn't mean anyone who is out on an excursion having a soul experience in their liberation, who is having integration with another person, means that you are no.
You're being primed for pregnancy here. And so the second question is, if that did happen, have you had another dream where you were pregnant? This is UFO abduction phenomenon. Put it to you this way. Okay, let me stay focused here, because there's a lot of directions I can lean into right now. But is possession pregnancy? And that's how they begin their exorcistic rites in Islamia. Okay.
I
what
would
do-
say that would be exorcism would be a form of at least willing and manipulating and trying to impregnate. Well, for example, let's look at the movie The Exorcist. Well, she was screwed. Let's use that word literally. She was screwed. She was fucked from the beginning. You can take that metaphorically from whatever level. She was fucked. She was impregnated with this demonic spirit that had every intention to bring forth other aspects of itself. And until it met the priest, and though it didn't have to be a priest, it could be an old lady who doesn't believe in nonsense, whatever it is. The point is, until it met something else that said, I am a force of the light and this is not going to happen. So I would think that truly any form of exorcism is always about the intention of bringing forth a spawn. Everyone, my name is Keith Anthony Blanchard. I'm going to be right back with my guest tonight, Nathaniel Gillis, and we're speaking about spiritual warfare. That's a question I want to ask him. It's a beautiful question. You know, to what level is there really spiritual warfare? We can look out in COVID-19. There's a lot of spiritual warfare. And we can move up other rungs of the ladder and there's spiritual warfare. But truly, in the heavens, this is where I really get, my skin starts to itch. Not because I'm scared, only because I don't understand it. I stand under something that is truly powerful, like Nathaniel and many of us, that is illumined. So to what level does the words spiritual warfare actually apply? Because I won't say my opinion, in my experience, to the level of the absolute, there is absolutely no such thing as spiritual warfare. It doesn't exist. Because if there was spiritual warfare to where beings of light are truly battling out the dark, I'm a being of light. So here's this being of light, this angel of light, and it's shining. There's no fight there. The light just completely engulfs the darkness and simply makes it non-existent. But I understand my guest tonight, and we're speaking about this realm, which can be purgatory, which is limbo, purgatory, to wanting to refine ourselves and refine the experience. And at least, dear Lord, give me a nugget, a cookie, to understand sometimes why I'm so scared to death to simply just go to sleep. Because when you go to sleep, you fall completely inside. You lose all awareness of what the mind craves by the body. And the survival can be intense. The greatest thing for that kind of stuff is information. Ignorance will bring the old hack to you to sit on your chest and scare the living bejesus. I'm going to be right back with the final segment with my guest tonight, Nathaniel Gillis, and we're speaking about spiritual warfare. Let the love of God fall upon you. It's always been that way. Time to celebrate who you are. You are perfect in every way.
There's a world apart from man and fear. There might be a better way to appear. There's a time to trust and a time to love and a time to know what you are. So let the love of God, it's always been that way. It's time to celebrate what you are, perfect in every way. So it's up to you, a choice to make, to promise yourself plan to make, to promise yourself you'll celebrate. There's a time to love, and a time to trust, and a time to know you are loved. Time to know you are loved. So let the love of God on you. It's always been that way. It's time to celebrate what you are. It's time to celebrate who you are. It's time to celebrate that you are.
Welcome back to Center of Light. Keith Anthony Blanchard here. I am your host. Tonight we're speaking about ghosts in many different forms. Coast to Coast, my dear friend, has been on quite a few times. Good to see you. Once again, I want to share because I deserve it. Do you deserve what you want? Homecoming Crossing the Bridge of the Soul has become bestseller recently. So thank you to those for your support. In this forum, you can find the link to purchasing this book, as well as now is the time to give me your reviews. Thank you for your support. You're lovely beyond measure. Let me get my guest back on. Let me get to the screen, and there it is. So what, my friend, does this all mean in terms of exorcism? What is truly an exorcism? What are we exorcising, and what reflection does that truly, and I mean that word underlined 3 times, bold exclamation, what does that truly mean? Are we just trying to cast out a something, or are we trying to come to a realization about a something that is more powerful than a casting out in the first place?
Well, the casting out, at least the exorcistic rite, was to cleanse an individual from what's called corpse pollution. It's found in the book of Numbers 16, chapter 16, I believe. And that was basically, this is what you do when you've come in contact with a corpse. This is what you do. It's basically the red heifer ritual, because it was meant to imitate blood. He'll cleanse you with the blood. That's why Jesus died on Calvary. But that's what it is. That's the exorcistic ritual. And it's not for fallen angels. It's for someone who actually came in contact with the corpse. So that's that version of it. And I think that's what really points to the fact that they're not fallen angels, because it's not just the exorcistic rite that was written to cleanse someone from corpse pollution, but all of the curses that are written to these entities, and at least what they manifest and what they're suffering from, was written to evil embodied humans. But what this means for us in modernity is we have to understand what they believe in. In Ezekiel 13, Yahweh said that they were creating external souls. So what we need to think about is someone who has a skin disease. That's why the Bible says, don't cut yourself, don't mark yourself for the dead. It was a form of grieving to them. And so what they do is they don't just kill their victims. It's like a serial killer. They will take pieces of their flesh and sew it onto themselves. If you would like another biblical reference, go to the book of Job, chapter 16, where he says, I will sew sackcloth onto my skin. You don't sew sackcloth to skin. You put it on it in a way of grieving and mourning. But that's what he's referring to. He's referring to these entities, these soul hunters. Then he says that my face is red from weeping. Why? He's referring to book of Numbers, how they would mix the ashes of the red heifer with water and pour it onto themselves. So what we have to think about is, okay, what is an external soul? What was a soul to them? What is their worldview made of? Well, when I got into this research, and I read a lot, guys. I read most of my day. But
you and I in the green room, I said, what do you do all day long? You said, I read.
Hey, man.
I love it. And in all that reading, the intuition becomes heightened, because it may not be exactly about what anyone is reading at any given point. When you begin to read and read and read, or research and research and research, something in the form of intuition becomes surfaced, and it says, Now that you are seeking, seeking ye shall find. I will show you the path in the maze. That's quite amazing because you're looking for something. And because beyond knowledge is the wanting of knowledge, which brings about wisdom, which says, okay, we understand that you're wanting to walk down this road and keep walking down this road until we tell you to take a right or a left.
Yeah, you start to interpret the darkness instead of being stared at it.
Correct.
Stared by it.
Exactly.
But let's, so check this out. This is going to be mind blowing. It blew my mind away. What is an external soul? What is it that these soul hunters are creating for themselves? What is it that they did? Because I know this is our last segment, but what is it that their intention was in Genesis, right? Like, what's their end game? Well, it's not an accident that they're creating second selves. Janice Bodie from the University of British Columbia, she said that possession as a phenomenon is the merging of energy and matter. So what they're doing is they're taking their consciousness, creating a second self, or as Fritz Kramer calls it, a social skin, and then dropping their consciousness into it. So now it's formerly human in terms of the interior entity, but it looks human to us. That's the external soul they were creating in Ezekiel 13. So, why? In the book, The Golden Bow, this is fascinating. In the book, The Golden Bow, there's an anthropologist, and he writes about this external soul, and he says that this external soul was used. It's not just a thing, it's a phenomenon. He says that this external soul was first mentioned in the Levant, in Mesopotamia, and it was used by ancient primordial warriors. What they would do, his name was James Fraser, by the way, because I've forgotten, I didn't want to disrespect him. James Fraser is called the Golden Bow. But these warriors with the external soul, what they would do is that at the moment of death, in the middle of a battle, they would literally dispossess their own body, hello demonic possession, and then place their soul in someone else. I know I'm getting passionate. We got to catch this. That soul that they possessed was called an external soul. It was a form of self-preservation because they did not want to die. Ezekiel 13, those that should die live. Those who should live die. Now, here is the balancer, the equalizer to all of this. People have died that should not have died. And these entities are the ones who killed them. Yahweh, this is what he does. This is fascinating. He does not need to possess somebody to exist. Yahweh is species unique. So he sends a son, an extension of himself. This gives me chills, brother. Oh my God. He doesn't need to possess anybody. I am me. But I'm going to send him, and I'm going to be in him. Now watch, this is crazy. In Numbers 16, Yahweh gathers a bunch of priests and says, listen, I'm going to give you the antidote for a sin that has not even been committed yet. The antidote is when a high priest touches a dead body. What did they do? They get a red heifer, blood, it's a sacrifice. They take the ashes, mix it with water, and sprinkle it on themselves. It was supposed to be a typology of blood. So then we have Yeshua coming in. Now, he's not just the blood redeemer. He's the redeemer of blood. It's different. The redeemer of blood is an ancient understanding that there's someone in the family who's murdered, and the redeemer of blood comes in to avenge the blood guilt of the laws. But he has to be related to the person that was dead, that got killed. And in addition to that, the blood redeemer goes and buries them. And all of this. Well, the whole point is this. Yahweh could not do that for us because we were not related to him. He had the will, the desire, and the ability, but he could not fulfill the ritual unless we were related to him. So what does he do? He dies and then makes us family. Now he's the blood redeemer. That's why Paul in the New Testament says we have not a high priest who cannot be touched. He's going right back to Numbers. Isn't that incredible? And what he's saying is now there's I got chills. Now there's an equalizer here. And that's, and in a sense, that's exactly what's going on. That's exorcism. That's why they're terrified, because he's species unique. He doesn't have to extend his life by possessing other people. He'll possess himself. He'll speak a word and step into it. And they don't know what to do.
Brother, in closing,
That's my rant.
From the chat room, Debbie Grassberger Schmole asked the question. I'm assuming that y'all know each other, or she knows of you. Is could you ask Nathaniel to speak on dominion and how it applies to his work, please?
Dominion in terms of,
that's all she said. Dominion. Maybe instead of domination, that which is, I'm assuming, Debbie, because we'll have a few minutes. Would you clarify as soon as possible?
no, I want to make sure I get the question right, because
I totally get that. Such an important conversation. Everyone, Keith Anthony Blanchard here, Center of Light, hanging out with my brand new friend, Nathaniel Gillis, and we're speaking about spiritual warfare. Let me fill this time until she responds. Give me a quick response on what I mentioned earlier about, I understand spiritual warfare. We're living in limbo, being in purgatory, COVID-19, being offered a choice between this one and that one, and sometimes we linger and we want to hang out in the lobby. As much as we claim and swear that we want to go into the garden of forever, we want to hang out in the lobby because we understand the lobby and it's comfortable. So through all of this, how does one begin to navigate and understand that or do you support the idea that on the higher realms there really is no war happening? Because it's like bringing a cell of cancer into the realm of God that only produces the possibility for it to spread. So to what level would you acquire, say that this warfare, which is a very real place, because many people, not only demons, we have our own demons we're trying to settle with. And so we all find ourselves in this warfare between the light and the dark. So how far up this metaphorical tier do you think this actually happens in the heavens, so to speak? Or do you think this is like somewhat down to where, down the earth kind of thing?
I think that it's not out there. I think it's in here.
Correct.
I have a specific case. It's actually, oh my God. There's a listener that listened to one of my shows earlier in the year, and his dad experienced these soul hunters. His dad was a remote viewer. So he would go to sleep, and in that sleep state, his soul would leave his body. And he said that one night he encountered entities that did not know the safe word that he was given. And when they realized that he knew they weren't who he should be talking to, they changed their appearance to something he called unearthly. The man later had a heart attack. But here's the most important part, because to answer your question, it's grieving to me, but I'm just glad I know the master, to understand this. But he said that when he got back into his body, his father came out and was basically inconsolable. He went into the living room and he could see as these entities, I have pictures of it, but they would carve religious amulets into the flesh, and one of them looks to be like Egyptian hieroglyphs. Make no mistake, ladies and gentlemen, these are either ancient beings or they're ancient in belief system. And so the discipline of demonology is so far behind, oh my God, I got a phone app that, people say, man, I got this EVP. I'm a demonologist. No, no, at will, because these entities are operating within laws that we're not yet aware of. There's someone that's giving them license. It's not just in possession cases. In the Kabbalistic tradition, we have a case with Isaac Luria where the entity acted like an incubus. And when he possessed her after the intercourse, they were interrogating him, and he says, well, I wouldn't have touched her until she threw dust on me. Then I was immediately given license to
That would be
enter.
the invitation. In other words, I got a response from you. Is that what you're saying?
Correct. Correct.
So that being
See,
said, go ahead, my friend. Go ahead.
no, we don't see if they're playing by different rules and they're playing a different game, and we're still understanding what it is they're playing and what they're believing in, and that's my deal. I'm going to end with this, and we can get to the second thing here. But that's my issue with parapsychology. Just because you know the dimensions of the chessboard doesn't mean you know the rules of the game.
That brings me to the question that Debbie continued that we were waiting on. She clarified, and she's putting it right on you, bro. Seriously, she's putting it right on you. And so she says, I'm assuming, do you, Nathaniel, have confidence in your connections to God and Jesus to cast demons out? And not that I'm not going to buffer for
That's
you,
fine. Yes,
but
I do.
I want to say that, look, because I will tell you how spiritual Keith Blanchard is, doesn't mean I'm stupid. It doesn't mean I'm going to go put myself in a situation. I have a lot of faith. I have so much faith that my life is beautiful and harmonious, and I'm a blissful human being. But when I am presented with a situation that will take me out of my beautiful, harmonious blissfulness, then I become a responsible human being, a person to say, I'm not sure I want to tread into this particular territory, because I would rather always have bliss move through my body than something that's going to make me afraid. Just because I would say Nathaniel or anyone who is someone practicing in a particular field, just because you're a skydiver doesn't mean you're going to go practice the experience of jumping out of a plane without a parachute, knowing that there's a net under you, so forth. So I guess what she's saying is, do you actually have the opportunity to move in the field to put your faith into practice?
Of course, yeah. Most
How
of the
far are
time,
you willing to go? Is what she asking.
I will go as far. I will go as far as this demonology needs me to. I mean, it's not just many cases, it's not just the banishment of an unwanted being. I mean, that could happen if you walk in the door, if it recognizes you. I mean, come on, there have been deliverance ministries I've seen where they wouldn't even respond to anybody. And you would have a missionary from Africa who's straight from Africa. I know the guy. It's fascinating. He just walks up and says, you know what? Hi, I'm so-and-so. And that entity speaks in fluent French. I remember you cast me out at a crusade in Africa, right? But there's a recognition there. So, of course, I'm confident in my giftings. Matter of fact, before I even get to the house, most of the time I have a forerunner that will come and tell me. It's either an apparition or an angel or something that says, okay, I mean, and that's helped me out in many cases. I had a case of possession and not too far away from here where the individual, I asked him straight up, it's an hour and a half drive. I don't get paid for this. I'm going to use my own gas. I'm not going to charge you, but make sure, just tell me, if I get there, do you want my help? Oh, well, I don't know. Why? Because, sometimes it gives me information about people and I tend to like it. Okay, fine. It'll use you. You'll think you're using it, but it'll use you. As I'm talking to him, I said, I was talking to the mother. I see an apparition of a man who committed suicide. His name's David. Who is he? Oh, that's my ex-brother-in-law. Well, why didn't you tell me this? Right? I didn't think these things matter. But to answer the question, absolutely, I'm very confident in my calling, not my abilities. I'm nothing. I'm a clay vessel. But in terms of callings, yeah, I wouldn't be here if I wasn't confident.
Bro, that's beautiful. Would you shout out to our listening audience anything you want to tell them about how to find you, what to do to look for you, any events, any books, anything like that, anything at all?
Yeah, my website is njgillis.com. It's GILLIS, and you're going to have some of my research on there. I update it when I can. You're going to have all of my past and future events. You can look me up on YouTube. I have a lot of interviews on there here lately, especially. I'm on Instagram, Nathaniel J. Gillis. I'm on Facebook, Nathaniel J. Gillis. The Skin That Crawls, ladies and gentlemen. That's the book that's going to be out here at the end of October. And I'm going to be detailing how it is that these entities operate. I'm going to give us a description of what they're after, how they're doing it. You know, I think that before we will understand how to fight, we have to understand what we're fighting against. And when God says that he hath not given us a spirit of fear, it wasn't a suggestion. It was a mandate.
Yeah,
It
right.
wasn't, you know, it wasn't. And that's one thing that I learned when I was growing up in that house is these entities recognize things. They recognize things in us that we sometimes don't even recognize in ourselves. But to end this, and I guess for my last word, is that there are many people right now that are hearing my voice that are hurting in hidden places. And I want you to know that you're not alone in this season of uncertainty. Those of you who are being haunted by hurt and pain, that you are called to something bigger and you are pregnant with purpose. Do not ever forget that you're called. That's it.
That's delicious, man. That's like organic mayonnaise on a sandwich.
There we go.
I
There
love
we
it,
go.
dude. I really enjoyed my time with you. Thank you for sharing your passion. I heard you say a couple of times tonight, I'm about to get really passionate. Can I? And I was like, bro, that people come on Center of Light and say, what do you want to talk about? Like, what the fuck are you asking me that for? This is your platform. Tell me your heart. You know, I can go in many fields. I understand you can go in many fields. Tell me what got you by the wazoo. That's what I want to know about.
Yep.
Passion is everything. Passion opens the door. It's the fire of God. Passion. The universe, you look around, the universe is passionate. Nothing could have come about if it wasn't passionate, sincere, and all those beautiful qualities. And you have that in what you're doing, sir. And you're bringing the light via the darkness. I had a sister friend of mine many years ago come on Center of Light Radio, and she goes, let me explain something to all of you. And she says, you don't find God by the light, because that which you already have in your life as joy is already illumined. The problem that you're having as to not really taking in God fully is because of the dark. So you can only find the remainder of God in you by moving through the dark.
That's exactly right.
Kind of like
Reminds-
those demons being the agents of light.
Exactly right. You know, and as you're saying that, I keep getting this nagging feeling that there's going to be somebody that has listened or is listening now that they don't know how to pray. And I don't know why I feel. I'm just going to say this real quick. And then
How do we pray, brother?
Heschel, Abraham Joshua Heschel, one of my heroes in Judaism, is just, God, what a titan. You got to look him up. But he was teaching at the Jewish Theological Seminary in New York, and he had a kid that came in, a Jewish boy, and the Jewish boy said, you know, he goes, can I meet with you? And Dr. Heschel said, okay, you know, what's going on? He goes, listen, he goes, I'm 100% Jewish. And he goes, I don't know how to pray. And in Judaism, prayer is not just something you just go out and say. It has to be strict, right? It's strategic. These are the prayers you have to pray. He said, I'm not literate enough to know what to pray. And Heschel, who they called the greatest theologian of the 20th century, leaned back in his chair and he said, those who truly yearn to pray, we do not presume to judge. If they do not know how to pray, let them pray to pray. And
Wow.
if they have no tears to cry, let them pray for tears. And let them find strength in knowing that this too is a high form of prayer. So if you're out there and you don't know what you don't know, just the fact that you don't know is enough. That's
Totally
value.
agreed. It's I get it. Just the wanting of knowing how to pray, or the
That's
wanting how to do
Bro.
or whatever, is the absolute prayer. There, in fact, there is no other prayer.
He'll make you cry, brother. He'll make you cry.
There
He's
is no
amazing.
other prayer. Just the fact that I'm wanting to humble and be reverent is the absolution of true prayer versus knowing the method, the methodical aspect, or the quote right way. There's no right way. You just have to open up this gate, this heart, to say, make me a channel of your peace. What other words do you need in your moving through your heart, right?
Exactly. You know, he said, if you don't have tears, pray for tears.
Bro, thank
And,
you.
oh, yeah.
Thank you.
man.
Keep
Yeah,
us
thank you.
keep us informed what you're doing. You're welcome here on Center of Light Radio anytime, my friend.
Thank you, sir. And I've enjoyed myself thoroughly. Thank you for having me.
Hang out with me if you can for a minute. I'd love to chat with you backstage.
Sure.
Everyone, Keith Anthony Blanchard here, hanging out with Nathaniel Gillis, and we've been talking about spiritual warfare. I so enjoyed this conversation. It brings me back to my Catholicism, and now I'm recovering. That's not an insult, it's a fact. I'm not recovering from Catholicism as the ritual. I love the ritual of Catholicism. It's very participatory. You stand, you kneel, you talk, you sit. I'm talking about the dogmatic stuff. Slap on your hand makes you feel guilty, which opens up the door for the old hag and all this other stuff just to come in and bother the living God knows what out of you. But it's all God. It's all agents. Grace comes in many different forms. When we begin to pigeonhole what we think grace looks like, we miss it entirely. So what does grace look like? I'll tell you exactly. How can I tell you that? It looks just like you when you're looking in the mirror. That's what grace is. It looks just like you when you look in the mirror. Your brother, Yeshua, your favorite deity, you have to want to be with the it of that deity so much that in the marriage between you two, you become one. And everything you think you know that is real, possible, in, out, up, down, hot, cold, real or illusory, gets burnt into the eternal fire of infinite spiritual God love and worship. You, my friend, are loved beyond measure. Thursday night, 2 people have been together in 27 lifetimes. I will see you then.